Hey guys, happy Wednesday. It's Hannah here, and I'm going to be talking about bobbles today for our demo days. So, in my knitting experience, I have done 3 different types of bobbles. There are many other types of bobbles besides these 3 types. This one is best for stuff that's knitted flat, and it basically creates a bobble onto the right side of your fabric while you're knitting on the wrong side, and I'm not going to be demonstrating this one. These 2 are a little bit more normal or usual. This one on the right side, you knit one, yarn over, knit one, yarn over, knit one into one stitch. And then on the wrong side, on the way back, you're going to knit those 5 together, and then you're going to slip one with yarn in front so that you have the bobble kind of sticking out on either side as a slip stitch. And I'll demonstrate this one. The 3rd type that I have done is one where you do both of these things at the same time. So all on the right side of your work, you're going to knit one, purl one, knit one into the same stitch. You turn your work, you purl those 3 stitches together, you turn your work back to the right side, and then you slip that little lump over to your right needle. So I'll demonstrate these 2 today. The biggest tip I want to give for bobbles, especially if you're doing, well, really any type, is the sharpest needles that you can possibly find. If you're a very, very loose knitter, you might be able to get away with doing bobbles on bamboo needles. I'm a fairly tight knitter, and I personally cannot do them at all on bamboo needles. And even some moderately sharp stainless steel. I tried these shop needles first. You can see these are still pretty, they have a blunt tip, but they're still pretty pointy, and I couldn't do it. So I went and got these needles, which are very, very pointy, and the easiest way to do these things, like purling 3 or knitting 5 together, is to have a super, super sharp tip. So that's my first tip. Second tip is, even if you're a tight knitter like myself, whenever you do these like groups of stitches that you're going to eventually have to knit or purl together, try to do these groups of stitches as loosely as possible. I know it seems annoying and like it might look inconsistent, but in the end, it's much more worth it to be able to easily knit or purl your groups of stitches together. Okay, so we're going to start by talking about this one. So I've just cast on a handful of stitches on some waste yarn here. I tried it on white yarn first and realized it wasn't as easy to see. So we're just going to knit in a few stitches, and then we will talk about this first bobble type. So I'm just doing this on a garter stitch background, but of course, usually a pattern will tell you what to do. I will say that there are other types of bobbles that might be specified in a pattern. Okay, so I've just knit in 5 stitches into my row here. And now on my right side, I'm gonna knit one, keeping it on the needle, yarn over, knit one into the same stitch. Again, trying to keep this pretty loose. Yarn over, knit one into the same stitch again, and then I'll drop it off the needle to the right side. So I have 5 stitches over here. And then I'm gonna knit one in between, and I'm gonna do that again. So we're gonna knit one loosely into the stitch, yarn over, knit one loosely into the same stitch, yarn over, knit one loosely into the same stitch, and then pull it off the needle and knit one. Okay, so I'm just going to knit to the end of this row quickly so that we can see what the wrong side will do on the wrong side. So one pattern that uses this technique in abundance is the January Skies shawl by Melanie Berg, which I made earlier this year, and I highly recommend that pattern. I have to say that pattern taught me to stop hating bobbles quite so much. I used to really find them quite tedious, and they can be kind of tedious, but in that pattern you have to make hundreds of these bobbles, and eventually I feel like you kind of learn to see it as a Zen experience. But the bobbles in there, I would say, really add to the texture of the shawl without making it seem, I don't know, kitschy, if that makes sense. Okay, so now we're on our wrong side, and we're gonna start coming back towards where we made the bobbles, or the pre-bobbles, I would like to say. And I know that I'm a thrower, so I know that this might look a little different if you're if you flick or if you knit continental, but the same principles, essentially apply. Okay. Let's see. So we're getting close. Probably could have put a few more on the front. Okie dokie. Okay, so now we've gotten to our big set of stitches here. So this is where it gets a bit tricky. You kind of have to shove the needle very parallel to the first needle up the inside to collect all those 5 stitches. Sometimes doing a bit of wiggling can help. And then what I recommend as you try to knit the 5 together is almost angling your needle like on this angle as you go, so that the tip is catching that wrap as you go through. You might need to make sure you don't split the yarn. It can be a little bit tricky. So you're gonna knit those 5 together and flip and slip it over, and then you're gonna slip the next stitch with yarn in front, and then we'll do the same thing. So we'll knit these 5 together. As I said, the looser that you can do it on the front side, the better. I always try to just double check to make sure the yarn isn't split. Slip the one, and then I'm going to knit those other stitches. And then we'll look at our right side and see what it looks like. So, seeing it against, as you can see, you get small bobbles, and you can kind of press them out a bit. If you look from the side profile, you can see that they're small, not too big. I wish that the lighting was a little bit easier to see here. One of the reasons I like this bobble is you get a textured effect, but it's not enormous. So some of the techniques are really big. This one is a little bit smaller. One of my favorite ones. Okay, so we're back on our right side. So I'm gonna knit past these ones that we just did and try to show you the other technique on the left side of my work. If anyone has any questions about bobbles, feel free to drop them in the comments. As I said, usually a pattern, in my experience at least, will tell you how to make the kind of bobble they want for the pattern. You don't usually have to guess, but if you're trying to design something yourself and you want to add a bobble, these are the 2 that I think are the least annoying, essentially. I would also say that this one that we just did is particularly nice if, like in the January Skies shawl, you do the bobble rows in a different color. So you can see it doesn't really stand out that much in this solid color, but the January Skies shawl, all the bobble rows are done in a contrasting color to whatever your main color garter sections are. Okay, so another option is this one, and this one is used in the January hat that Kelbor Woolens put out like a year of free hat patterns. So this is the one that they use in that hat pattern, and they also use it quite a lot, but I've seen this one in other places as well, just to give an example. So in this case, you're gonna knit one, purl one into the same stitch, knit one into the same stitch, so that you have 3 stitches on the right hand needle here, and pull it off. And then you're going to turn your work, and you have your working yarn now attached on this left side, and you're going to purl these 3 stitches together, slip it off, turn your work back, and then you're going to slide this little nubbin over, and I'm going to knit one in between, and we'll do that again. So we're going to knit one into the stitch, purl one into the same stitch, knit one into that same stitch again, and slide it over, turn your work around. You're going to purl those 3 stitches together, so that you have slip it to the left needle, turn your work back around, and then slip your little nubbin over to the right needle. And I'll just knit to the end of this row. So these are definitely give you 2 slightly different effects, which I'll show you in a moment. The advantage of this one, of course, is that the whole bobble is taken care of on one row. So if you're designing a pattern, that can be an advantage, certainly. And as you can see with this one, they're a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit more inconsistent looking in shape, and they stick up a bit more than these ones, for better or worse. These ones almost look like little, I don't know, I don't want to say little mountains or something, but as I said, the advantage, of course, is that when you go back to your wrong side, next row, you don't have to think about these stitches anymore. The bobble has been complete. It does leave a little bit larger of a hole in your work, as you can see here, though, whereas these ones are a little bit flatter, but you don't really get that effect. So I would say if you're doing stripes, definitely this type, highly recommend. And if you're just doing all one color, or you just want more texture, the second type is a great option. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions, and we will post our codes and everything in the comments. Happy knitting!